Hello everybody and welcome back to another Storytime video. Since I went over one horribly traumatic romantic experience, I figured I would just go over the other one too. Just to get them all out of the way, and like I said, I won't even have to think about them anymore after that. But just FYI, no need for a trigger warning here. I managed to not repeat the terrible pattern that I set early on in my relationships. Absolutely no physical violence here. So as much as it pains my self-esteem to admit it, I got ghosted. This happened about 6 months after the horrible breakup explosion with my ex-boyfriend, and I was all like, I was ready for different people in my life. I always had this idea oh, that relationship sucked. I have some good relationships in my karma bank. I'm gonna make better choices about who I date. They're gonna be emotionally available, right? They're gonna be nice. They're not gonna treat me like crap, and I'm gonna like their family. That was what I was thinking at this point in my life. So it was summertime in Port Townsend, Washington, which is just a glorious time to be alive. And I was having a glorious time of it, and I met this guy. His hometown was Port Townsend, but he was an actor, so he was working in New York. Or I guess trying to work, I don't know, doing what actors do, right? Trying to make it. But I first met him at the job where I was working, at an Asian noodle and sushi restaurant. I was being a server there, and it was not my favorite job in the world by any means, but it paid the bills. And apparently it helped me meet cute boys. He came in with his family, and I just flirted mercilessly with him the whole time. It was actually ridiculous. I don't think I would have the guts to be that forward anymore in my older, wiser, and more proper years. And soon after that, I bumped into him again at this place where I was volunteering, where I was learning how to rebuild old bikes and helping people work on their bikes. But anyway, we ended up going out on a couple of few dates and started spending time with each other in that way that young adults tend to. If you catch my drift. That's the best I can do at winking. Sad story. But I was feeling so fragile and crappy and confused about the last breakup, and I was only starting to learn about those patterns that had led me to that place in the first place. I was only starting to learn about boundaries. I was starting to learn about the meaning of the word codependent, and definitely identifying with that definition. And so I thought maybe this is kind of a perfect experimental fling for me. You know, it's externally boundaried because he lived in New York City where he was trying to become an actor, and he would be going back there at the end of the summer. So I thought, perfect. It has a defined endpoint. I can practice just being with someone and keeping my boundaries and not getting totally enmeshed with them. And when we first started hanging out more regularly, I was really upfront, and I was like, this is just a fling. This is nothing serious. This is not going to develop into anything. I want to be really clear with you about my intentions, and it was clear. We're not together. It's not a relationship. We're just passing time. And great, we're both on the same page, right? And I was kind of surprised because even with those boundaries, he was still really super considerate and sweet. He would call me if he was going to be later than we thought. He would always ask me how I was doing, check in with my feelings. We could have good, deep conversations. It's very different from my last relationship where I would try to talk to him about, human feelings or something. And it was just absolutely nothing, just crickets. Be the same experience as talking to a rock. Except actually I do feel like rocks are fairly receptive to talking. Anyway, very different with this guy. And I have to say, I loved it. It was so nice. It gave me such an introduction into what being treated like a human being felt like. And I remember saying to my therapist at the time, it's like I've been drinking Sunny D for my entire life and I just got fresh squeezed orange juice. I'm never going back. So we were seeing each other every day and spending practically every night together. And, we just ticked along like this in this blissed out fling. And a month flew by. And at that point, I knew that I was developing feelings for this guy. Just, I really liked him. I really appreciated how he was treating me. I started to realize that it was going to be kind of difficult for me when he left, but I was still trying to be really clear about the boundaries of our relationship, Lily, don't get attached, don't get enmeshed. I knew that I was developing very loving and caring feelings towards him, but I was also super aware that I wasn't the most healthy person emotionally. I wasn't very well boundaried married, and so I knew that it was pretty much just me. You know, that was just my crazy getting all attached, and I could totally manage it because it was just unreasonable. And this guy was one of those unicorn humans that was like raised by parents that are still together, who still have a nice relationship, who still like each other, who have just created really nice lives for themselves. People who manage to have and raise kids without emotionally abusing or battering them. And this guy was just so unwounded. And because of it, I put him up on this emotional pedestal, like, he knows how to operate better than I do, so I should let him take the lead because he knows about boundaries. He was raised with boundaries. He knows how to speak up for his needs. He was raised to do that. He knows that he's loved and that he's worthy. He was just raised with that. And since I had been open with him about what had happened with my ex-boyfriend and where I was at emotionally, and that I wasn't ready for anything serious, I wasn't looking for a relationship, I just wanted a really easy, no muss, no fuss fling, I assumed that his emotional maturity and my openness would combine to make something that was really clear to everyone involved. But then I met his parents, and we had bumped into them a few times, you know, while we were out and about in Port Townsend, but he invited me over to his parents' home. And when he invited me, I said, "Don't you think that's kind of a step that we don't need to take? Like, what's the point? This is a fling. You don't invite your random booty call hookup to meet your parents." But he was really innocently insistent, like, "Yeah, it'll be fun, come along." And so I said, okay, I let him take the lead there. We went to their house. We cooked dinner together, we laughed, we ate, we played board games. If I remember correctly, there might have been a guitar involved at some point, and then we slept over at his parents' house, this house that the entire family had literally built with their own two hands, this place that was literally built with and full of the love of this family. And I fell in love with that. I fell in love with his parents. I fell in love with the idea of such a family existing. And to say that I wanted to be one of them is an understatement. They were literally everything I thought a family should be. They were kind and communicative and infinitely supportive, genuine and loving, but I was still trying to be really clear in my mind. Lily, this is a fling. It's nothing serious. Hold them as an example of what a family can be and shoot for that, aim for that. But all of these thoughts that you're starting to have about how much you love this and how much you want this, just don't do that to yourself because it's not possible. We've been really clear. This is a fling. So another blissed out couple of weeks goes by and we're getting closer and closer to the date when this guy's gonna go back to New York. He starts saying things to me like, "Oh man, I'm really gonna miss you," or, "Oh, I'm gonna have to bring you back to New York with me." And I would always laugh it off, but you know, when someone that you're starting to really care about says something like that, you read into it. And I read into it big time. I started entertaining fantasies like maybe I could move to New York. I would love New York City. There's 1,001 yoga studios. There's vegan food everywhere. I love living in cities. I love the noise of cities for a time. And I was really hyping it up in my mind. Like, I could do this. But even with those thoughts going through my mind, I was still telling myself, okay, even though he's saying this, he's just kidding. He's just joking. This is a fling. We've been really clear about that. We're not serious. We're not anything. This isn't a relationship, blah, blah, blah. Just telling myself that mantra in my mind while I'm trying to just enjoy his presence and enjoy the time that we do have together. And it was about that time that I went to a house party with a friend. It was like a friend of a friend's house party. I didn't really even know anybody there, but I met this other guy. And he was very different from the actor man. This other dude, he was like this big, he was gigantic. Let me just be clear. He was a giant lumberjack type person who rode bicycles. And we had some really good chemistry when we were chatting. But I ended up having to leave that party to go meet up with actor dude, and I didn't get his number, so I texted my friend who was still at the party and I asked her to get his number for me. And she did, though I now kind of like question those motives a little bit. But my initial thought was, okay, thank God. I'm just gonna spend like the last 2 weeks with actor dude, and then he's gonna leave New York, and then I'm going to have someone else to fall back on or on top of or whatever, and just distract me from him leaving and distract me from that sadness and disappointment. So I tried to keep that other guy on the back burner for a couple weeks. Like, this is not my proudest moment, you know, saying that I was trying to date 2 people, but, you know, again, I've been really clear with the actor guy, like, we're not in a relationship, we're not exclusive. So I didn't feel like I was doing anything wrong per se, but I also, you know, I wasn't in any hurry to have them, like, meet up together. So I actually ended up going out on a date with this other lumberjack fellow, and unfortunately the chemistry just didn't really pan out. It was a little bit flat. It fizzled on the date, and I didn't have high hopes for it, but I still thought, okay, well, after my actor guy leaves, I'll maybe pursue this more and just see how it goes, just because I'll be that desperate at that point. He was still a ridiculously handsome lumberjack, and that was enough to keep me occupied. So a few days later, it was the weekend and we were all going out, and my friend ended up hanging out with the lumberjack guy, and then I was hanging out with actor guy. Actor guy's dad was in a band, and that band was playing at this one bar called the Uptown. And so I was texting with my friend, and she was like, where should we hang out? And I said, hang out anywhere except the Uptown, because that's where I'm gonna be with actor dude, and I don't want these 2 guys to bump into each other right now. And she was like, okay, we'll go downtown or something. We'll go to Sirens, another bar. And I said, okay, great. Just anywhere but the Uptown. So I walk into Uptown, and of course, my friend is sitting there with lumberjack guy at the same GD table as my actor dude. And I walk in, and apparently there was like a cover charge for the evening. So actor dude yells over at the hostess who's at the door trying to collect my money, and he goes, oh no, don't worry about it. She's my girlfriend. And I was like, what? And even though I was looking at lumberjack dude while actor dude said girlfriend, and I was cringing inside at the awkwardness of this moment, I did still read into the use of the word girlfriend. So I went over and I sat down next to actor dude, and he puts his arm around me and like gives me a ridiculous kiss. I think he might have picked up on lumberjack dude vibes. I don't know. So then he takes me out to the dance floor, and he's like dancing with me like a pro, and I'm super uncoordinated. I don't know how to dance because I didn't come from the type of perfect frickin' family that taught their children how to dance, because they were too busy like eroding their sense of self-esteem and living in scarcity. But he is that type of guy who was taught how to dance by his perfect family, his perfect, loving family, who is in bands and who smiles at you like you're worthy of it. And with every single spin and dip, I fell more and more in love with the idea of being his girlfriend. And he said it, not me. And I know it's stupid, I know it's desperate, I know it's freaking crazy and codependent and irrational, unreasonable, ridiculous, because I'm crazy and broken and have horrible boundaries, and that's just why I'm feeling these things. But I couldn't stop. And that night, I decided not to fight it anymore. I decided not to fight like this ridiculous amount of happiness that I was feeling, because I knew that it was going to end. And that night, I just let myself be happy, and I let myself bask in the glory of being with this guy and belonging to him in a way, and belonging to that family in a way. And I was really happy. And after the dancing and the laughing and the having fun, we went back to my apartment, and he told me that he loved me. And suddenly, every single irrational, ridiculous, codependent, unboundaried feeling that I had had was totally validated. Because I was clear, and he knows that it's a fling, and he knows that this isn't expected, and he knows that this isn't necessary to get me into bed or whatever he's trying to do. He knows that I'm damaged and hurting and ridiculous, He knows all that, and he's emotionally healthy. He was raised with boundaries and a sense of self-worth. So he knows. He knows. And he still chose to say that he loved me. And love means something, right? Love has to mean something. An emotionally whole person raised by that kind of family with that kind of sense of self-worth, when they say that they love you, it has to mean something, right? Because they're not just saying it out of desperation. They know the consequences, right? And starting that night, I let myself hope for a future with this guy. I let myself envision it, pretend it, whatever you want to call it. I let it exist in my mind. And for a week or two, we were just in love, ridiculously in love. I was head over heels. I assumed it meant something. And then his last night came, and I had to work, and I worked with this man who always made fun of this actor dude. He called him like Mr. Tumnus or something. Something ridiculous. He didn't like him much. But he knew it was going to be a hard night for me. So he gave me 3 shots of sake, drove me home, dropped me off. By the time I got home, I was completely bombed. And I had this really long staircase, and I was so excited because I saw that actor dude had just gotten there. So I like ran inside and was running down the stairs, and my legs got either ahead of me or behind me, I'm not sure, but they shot out from under me, and then bam, 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 I went down the stairs on my ass, and I went down so hard that both of my clogs shot off my feet and hit the wall in front of me. Absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, I got to the bottom of the stairs. I was fine. But, you know, we had a beautiful last night together. Of course, I was imagining that it wouldn't be our last night. It was just the beginning of a break. And I said to him that night, you know, we were laying together about to go to sleep, and I said, I want to put it on the table that I moved to New York. You know, how about in a month I come visit and see if I like it, and if I like it, I'm gonna move there. And he was like, okay, yeah, come visit. He wasn't enthusiastic about the idea, and I guess I should have read into that more. But the next morning he left, and he walked out my door crying. I was crying. He was crying. Lots of feels everywhere. Feels everywhere. And after that, he never willingly contacted me again. And at first I was like, okay, well, he's traveling. He's busy. He's dead. I tried to rationalize it. I tried to understand it. I texted him. A couple days later, I was like, yo, you alive? Texted back like, oh yeah, just really busy. Okay. Nothing for several more days. I texted him something like, I miss you. Silence. Within a few days of his leaving, I started to quickly sink into the very deep pit of despair that is reserved for people who have been ghosted by someone who says that they love you. And I'm gonna be perfectly honest, I wasn't handling it well. This was not how my redemptive love story was supposed to go. I already had the crappy breakup. I don't get another one. Lily was in for good things. But then the real devastation started because I started bumping into his family and his friends around town. And I remember the first time I bumped into his parents after he had just left. And I saw them and I said, hey, how are you? You know, just keeping the warmth up. And they were very distant and cool. And they're like, oh yeah, how are you? And I was like, well, I've been better. You know, just being honest. And the look that they gave each other, they both just kind of like looked at each other like, oh God, let's just hope we get through the next 3 months without her claiming to be pregnant. And I won't claim to be psychic, but I'm like 99.5% sure that that's what that look meant. And it really hurt. It really hurt. At some point in October or November, I called him and asked him, like, do you just not ever think about me? And he just said, I thought we were really clear that when I left it was over. I hadn't yet learned what gaslighting meant, but I feel like that might have been some gaslighting because it was not clear. And you don't tell someone that you love them if you're planning to just leave and ghost them. least my theory on love. So it started to turn into fall and then winter in Port Townsend, and I am not a creature of the cold or the dark. And so it was tough for me, and I was dealing with, I guess, some seasonal affective disorder along with, being ghosted by someone who said that they loved you. And my endurance for pretending to be okay when I was like horrifically depressed was starting to wear thin. It had been 12 years of it already. I was done. And what I started to learn during those months of me getting more and more despondent was that emotionally whole people who have emotionally whole families and friends don't like to talk about hard stuff. They don't like to acknowledge that difficult emotions exist. They do not like their lovely lives disrupted by despondent, depressed people. And so I became increasingly alienated and ostracized throughout this community. My best friend, the one who had like accidentally on purpose brought lumberjack guy to the bar that I told her not to, she was going through her own crap. So I definitely don't, have any blame or animosity for this, but she became like increasingly more distant and unable to deal with me as she fell into her own love story with someone else. And so I ended up spending more and more time by myself and just with my dad's dog, because at this point my dad had gone down south to see his family, as he always does in the winter, and I was just kind of alone, except for the company of my other outcast misfit friends, like the older woman who lived next door to my dad's condo, who I would go and visit with several times a week, and we would just talk and spend time together. And she was wonderful. She was so supportive and kind because she had been where I had been in her life. And my friend barefoot toothless Jim, whose houseboat had burned down, freak accident. We met because I was really drunk in a bar one night and I started threatening to kill him. I'm not a good drunk. But it was the kind of people that society usually paints as outcasts and, trouble. Those were the people who ended up being there for me. Those were the people who really accepted where I was emotionally. There was this other man, what was his name? I think it might have been John, and he was like a sweet angel soul who was, I don't know if he was real, or if he was just an etheric angel who rode his bike around with his sweet little dwarf Australian Shepherd puppy in a trailer in the back, and they would just ride around being wonderful and playing guitar. And I would go on these ridiculous 4 or 5 hour walks where I would just literally walk around pretty much the entirety of Port Townsend. And I was walking downtown during one of these walks and I saw him on a park bench, and I sat down and we started chatting, and he asked me how I was, and I said, I'm not good. I was in love with someone and they just left me. And he just sat there with me while I weeped about it in public. And then several months later even, there's this other guy named Johnny, and I have no idea what his last name is. I don't even know how to find him on Facebook. He was sitting in the cafe that was underneath the Asian noodle house where I worked. And I walked in one day, it was right before my shift, to grab a cup of tea or something, and he asked me how I was. And I never really talked to him much before, but I said, Johnny, I'm not good. And he said, why? He was one of the only people that ever asked me why. And I told him, I'm sad. I'm depressed. I've been depressed for over a decade. I don't know if I'm ever going to get through it. I thought that if I did the work, if I did the emotional work, if I really committed to it, if I stayed present with my feelings, that this would go away. That was the promise, that you do the work and it goes away. It gets easier, and it's not getting easier. And I feel like I'm floating in the middle of the goddamn ocean and I can't see land and I'm just treading water. I don't know which direction to swim and I feel like I'm gonna sink. I don't know if I'm gonna get through this without giving up. I said that I feel like I'm waiting for somebody to give me permission to be happy, but I don't know who that is. And I don't know what I'm gonna do. And he sat there and he listened to me talk for probably 10 or 20 minutes. And he just said, yeah, sounds about like you're on course. And then he gave me this piece of paper and he said, don't open this until you get home tonight after you're done working. And I said, okay. So I put it in my pocket, kind of forgot about it until later. And then when I got home that night, I opened it up and it said, you have permission to be happy. Which of course made me burst into tears and cry for like 3 hours. But so we were coming up on Christmas and my birthday is right before Christmas. And it became very obvious to me, coming up towards my birthday, that I was going to be completely alone. And it just so happened that a day or two before my birthday, I bumped into one of actor dude's best friends. And he was another one of those, like, emotionally whole children that came from one of these, like, ridiculously perfect families. Like, this family built their own house, grew most of their own food while both parents worked. They had yurts in the yard and like huge gardens, and they lived out in the woods with a frickin' view of the mountains. It's just enough to make you want to shoot yourself. Their whole house was just gorgeous and made by hand. At that point in my life, I probably would have cut off my left hand without anesthesia to like be a part of that family for a week. And I casually mentioned that it was my birthday coming up and he said, oh, we're having a party on that night, you should come. And automatically my mind was like, oh, perfect, they'll be there, and then actor dude's parents will be there, and then of course someone will text and be like, oh, I saw Lily there, which would just make him think about me, perhaps for the first time since he left. I show up and I biked there. Their house is like 4 or 5 miles from my house, so I rode my bike there. And I wore my sweaty biking clothes and I was like, oh, can I change? So I changed and then quickly realized that I was very inappropriately dressed, as very uncomfortable. Like, obviously no one else was dressed for like a freaking cocktail party. I guess they were probably just dressed like emotionally whole people who didn't rely on showing off their cleavage to prove to everyone that they were a worthy individual. Sorry, not everybody can be like you. But it was very uncomfortable. This like beautiful family that lived in the woods and made refried beans out of pinto beans that they had grown themselves. They had someone renting their yurt, and she was a young woman who I think had also been raised by emotionally whole people, a woman who had never questioned her self-worth, a woman who played the accordion, for God's sake. And actor dude's parents sat there and asked her questions about her life and her plans and things that she knew, and they spoke in French to each other because of course she had time to learn French and learn how to play the accordion. And I realized that that was the kind of girl that they wanted for their son, not the kind of girl that would pretend to be pregnant to get attention. I didn't do that. And I'm sensitive. I'm a sensitive person. I'm the daughter of a narcissist. Like, I read the room. I read other people's body language and their emotions. I am extremely painfully sensitive to it. And the body language of everyone in that room was like, just don't touch her, or she might leak sad everywhere. And that's what I felt like. I felt like everyone was just hoping that I would leave before I leaked my sad everywhere. I felt tainted. I felt like an emotionally, physically tainted person. And I felt like they could smell it on me. And I'm not sure I've ever felt so small in my entire life. And then after dinner, these emotionally whole people were just, you know, spending time together, listening to music and giving each other foot massages like emotionally whole people do. I don't know. And they decided to call actor dude in New York City. And they called him and had him on speakerphone, and they were talking and laughing, and everyone was saying how much they missed each other. And then they passed the phone around one by one, and everyone said hello to him. No one asked me if I wanted to talk to him. No one said my name. There was a lot of like, oh yeah, so-and-so's here, and so-and-so's here, and oh yeah, you remember so-and-so, and no one said my name. No one acknowledged that there was like a past or that there was hurt. And I mean, I look back and I realize that no one probably knew that I love yous had been said and that I had a right to be hurt. I had a right to be confused. But no one said my name. No one mentioned that like, oh yeah, Lily's here and it's her birthday. Do you want to say hi and not be a dick? And I wanted so badly to be a part of these people. Like, I wanted to be accepted by them. I wanted to be acceptable to them. I just wanted to belong to something like that. I wanted to feel like I belonged someplace like that where people were nice. And I felt like it must be me. There must be something really wrong with me for these people not to like me. And they can see it, they can smell it on me. And there's just something about me that's not okay. And I was feeling so rejected. And so much like I had thought for so long, all I need is emotionally healthy people. And then I'll be okay. I can have healthy relationships if I can be with healthy people. But then there were all of these healthy people who didn't want to be with me because I was broken and I was hurting. And so I was trying to hold it together and I was just trying to be happy or feel happiness. And then around midnight, people started to leave, so I left as well. And I got on my bike and I was riding home in the middle of the night, freezing cold. Like, you know, anyone who's ridden a bike in freezing cold temperatures knows like how unbearable it is on your hands and your face with all the wind. And so it was Christmas. Like, it was officially Christmas because it was midnight, and I ruined Christmas for so many children that year because anyone on Discovery Road in Port Townsend, I'm sorry if your kid's Christmas got ruined a few years ago, because I rode home screaming the whole way. I was so mad and so hurt, and I was so cold riding home, and I was so frustrated with myself. Why, Lily? Why did you go there? Just so what? So someone would say your name and make that asshole think about you and maybe feel bad for what he did? Why did you put yourself through this? I was so mad at them for rejecting me, for making me feel so unwelcome and unacceptable. Barreling down hills at high speeds with cold wind, with the moon guiding me, screaming. And it was exactly what I needed. And then I got home, and as my birthday came to an end, I just sobbed for like 3 or 4 hours. Just sobbed for being a broken, worthless, unacceptable person. I sobbed because my naive, innocent belief that love should mean something was totally dead. It was just fucking dead. If you claim to love someone, it should dictate how you treat them. Like, if you claim to love your children, you shouldn't systematically put them down and smash their self-esteem to smithereens just so you feel more powerful. If you claim to love your partner, how you treat them should matter. You should not want to hurt them. You shouldn't lie to them or choke them out or tell someone that you love them and then just leave with no explanation. If you claim to love somebody, you should think about them and take care of them and try to be better for them. And that night, I knew that I had a choice to make. I knew that I could let the careless actions of other people change my beliefs about love and the way that I acted in regards to love. Or I could choose to continue to hold those beliefs about love, even though nobody else seemed to. That behavior wouldn't destroy me. It wouldn't change how I treated people. And then the thought occurred to me, maybe I don't have to wait for other people. Maybe I don't have to wait for somebody else to love me the way that I think love should be done. And I promised that even though I don't think I'd ever felt it, even though no one else had ever shown it to me, I had an idea of what real love looked like. And I was going to give that to myself because I couldn't count on anybody else to do it. And so, even though I didn't know what I was doing, even though I was so severely out of practice, I decided that I was going to love me. I was going to figure that out. I was capable of figuring that out. Because there are enough people in this world that want to be mean to me and reject me and treat me like I'm unacceptable. I don't have to be one of them. And that night, I made another promise to myself. And that was that I was never going to date another actor. Because that's what he did. He acted. He played Lily, an actor dude, fall in love, and have a summer romance. And he played it perfectly. and I fell for it. All right, you guys, that is it for this story time. It was a short relationship, but it was very meaningful, and not necessarily because of what he meant to me, but because of the goodness that he showed me, the sweetness and the kindness that he showed me softened me up and got my heart just soft and open enough that when he treated me with such disregard, it was that last little bit that I needed for my heart to just shatter. And then it was done. And I let it happen. I let my heart just break into 1,000 confused pieces, and then I slowly put it back together. And I put it back together right, in the way that only a woman can. And I have loved myself. True love. I have truly loved myself and allowed the treatment of myself to be much more congruent with my beliefs about love. Every day since then, in one way or the other, slowly getting myself to the point where it felt natural. And for that, I wouldn't trade anything else in the world. And those people, those perfect, emotionally whole people, they can keep themselves because they're not emotionally whole, because they cannot handle the whole range. They're scared of the whole range, and I don't have time for that bullshit. So that's that. Thank you for watching. You guys know the drill. Like, subscribe, share, comments down below. Have you ever been ghosted? Don't ghost people, kids. It's mean. Alright, you guys, until next time, make better choices for yourself. No one is going to do it for you, and take really, really good care. I will see you all very soon. Bye! Never do it, never date an actor, no! Don't do it to yourself!
Oh, now you've done it. Now you really screwed it up.
Ugh. Lily's really glad she didn't have kids with anybody. Every video, something catches on fire.